It was close to 1 in the morning, and the quiet in my apartment was starting to feel heavy. My roommate was gone for the weekend, and with nothing but the hum of the fridge and the ticking clock on the wall, the silence began pressing in like a weight. I'd been messaging a friend, and in the middle of a dull back and forth, he casually mentioned he had some weed, said if I wanted it, I'd have to swing by. It wasn't far, just across town, but it meant stepping out into a night that felt darker than usual. I threw on my hoodie, pulled the hood tight around my face, and slipped my keys into my pocket. My apartment complex was lit in scattered yellow pools from the old street lamps, each cone of light surrounded by a foggy halo. My car sat at the far end of the lot, right at the edge where the pavement dissolved into shadow. Beyond it, the world looked empty. The drive was short. Just 10 minutes of quiet roads, the kind where your headlights carve tunnels through the darkness and the rest of the night stays hidden. I picked up the bag from my friend's back door, in and out in seconds, and slid back into the driver's seat. That's when I saw them. Headlights, tall, bright, too high to belong to a normal car, a semi. It sat motionless at the far edge of the lot, engine idling low and steady. I couldn't see the driver, couldn't see movement at all, just the glare bouncing off wet pavement. There was no reason for a semi to be here. This wasn't a truck stop. I pulled out, trying to keep my speed normal. But the second I hit the street, the truck eased forward and pulled in behind me. Its headlights filled my mirrors, so bright I could barely see past the wash of white light. Left turn, I followed. Right turn, still there. 2 more turns. My hands gripping the wheels so tight my knuckles hurt. And the truck's lights never left my mirrors. By the time I turned into my apartment complex, my pulse was a hammer in my ears. I drove all the way around the back instead of stopping at my space. Watching the entrance in the mirror, the truck slowed at the mouth of the lot, then just kept going down the street. I let out a shaky breath, convincing myself it was nothing, just bad timing. I went inside, locked the door, and tossed the bag on the kitchen counter. I was still replaying the drive in my head when I decided to walk down to the convenience store for a soda. 5 minutes later, I stepped back outside and froze. The semi was back, parked at the far edge of the lot, its high beams slicing through the darkness, the low rumble of the engine vibrating faintly in my chest. No driver visible, no movement inside. Just those lights. I didn't go toward my car. Instead, I took the side exit, the one that led to the vending and ice machines. The corridor was narrow, the air damp. The hum of the ice machine so loud it almost drowned out the outside. Almost. The truck's door creaked open. Boots hit the pavement, heavy, deliberate. They were coming closer. I crouched behind the ice machine, the metal slick with condensation under my hands, cold seeping into my skin until my fingers ached. My breath felt like it was echoing in my own head. Too loud, too fast. So I clamped a hand over my mouth, pressing hard, willing myself to be silent. The boots drew closer. Heavy, deliberate steps that sank into the wet gravel. The sound of each one seemed to stretch out, as if the person wearing them wasn't in a hurry, as if they wanted me to hear them coming. Then the steps slowed. A shadow slid across the wall beside me, tall, wide-shouldered. The outline of a cap pulled low over the face. The shape blocked the dim light from the vending machine, making the corner where I crouched feel even darker. He stopped just feet from where I was hidden. I could hear him breathing now, not the shallow pant of someone who's been walking fast, but a slow, measured rhythm, calm, too calm, like he knew exactly where I was and was just deciding what to do next. The air between us felt thick, unmoving. My heart was slamming so hard against my ribs I thought he might hear it. I didn't dare move. Seconds dragged by, long enough for my knees to start aching from crouching, long enough for my mind to start screaming that he was about to lean over that machine and find me. But he didn't. Instead, he just stood there, still, silent except for that slow breathing. The kind of stillness that made it clear he was in control, that he wasn't afraid of being seen. Then finally he shifted. The sound of the gravel under his boots was sharp in the night air. He turned. Each step away was deliberate, unhurried, like he wanted me to hear every single one. The sound grew fainter, until I could hear nothing but the faint hum of the ice machine again. The truck's door creaked open. Metal groaned, Then the engine roared to life, deeper and louder than before, reverberating in my chest. Tires crunched over wet gravel, slow at first, then gaining speed. When I finally dared to peek around the side of the machine, I saw the taillights glowing red in the darkness, getting smaller and smaller until they disappeared around the corner of the lot. I stayed there, crouched in that damp corner for what felt like minutes, just listening to the silence. My legs were stiff when I finally stood and backed toward my apartment door, never taking my eyes off the spot where the truck had been. I didn't leave my apartment again that night. I sat on the couch, every lamp on, my body still tense, listening for that engine. It never came back. But every time I pass that ice machine now, I can still feel that shadow over me, still hear those boots in the gravel, still hear that steady breathing, slow and patient, like he had all the time in the world. I was 18, barely out of high school, running the long Oklahoma stretch of Interstate 40 alone. It was late summer, the kind of night where the air sticks to your skin, even after midnight, the kind where the heat shimmers off the pavement under the orange wash of highway lamps. I had the windows cracked just enough to let the wind carry in that dry, dusty smell you only get in the middle of nowhere. My old Civic hummed steady at 70. The road was a dark ribbon rolling under me, nothing ahead but the faint glimmer of reflectors and the occasional green exit sign flashing past. The interstate was almost empty. Sometimes I'd see a pair of headlights appear way behind me, then fade off into a different lane and disappear. But then I saw him, a semi in my rear view, far back at first. No big deal. You see hundreds of them out here, but this one stayed locked in my lane. No passing, no slowing, just holding steady like he'd picked me out of all the empty road. After a few miles, I changed lanes. So did he. I eased up, let him close the gap, thinking maybe he'd pass. Instead, his lights flashed, 3 quick bursts. I'd heard from friends that truckers sometimes do that to warn about hazards ahead, maybe even police hiding on the shoulder. But there were no hazards, no other cars, just me, the truck, and the endless hum of asphalt. The flashes came again. The second time felt different, slower, almost deliberate. My grip tightened on the wheel. I pushed to 75. He matched it exactly. It went on like that for miles. Every time I changed lanes, he mirrored me. Every adjustment to my speed, he stayed right there. Sometimes so close I could see the glow of his dash lights through my rear window. Sometimes hanging back, just far enough that the dark swallowed everything but those twin beams. When I finally spotted the glow of a gas station sign up ahead, it felt like a lifeline. I told myself I'd pull in, grab something to drink, maybe lose him if he kept going. But the moment I hit my turn signal, his blinked on too. The lot was empty except for a single pickup parked near the side of the building. I slid into a space under the brightest light I could find, engine still running. The truck didn't go to the fuel pumps. He rolled slow across the lot, almost circling, then stopped in the far corner with his engine idling. The low, steady rumble seemed to vibrate right through the air. I got out, telling myself I was overreacting, that I just needed caffeine and a stretch, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The store's glass doors reflected the parking lot perfectly, and as I walked toward them, I caught a glimpse. The truck's door was already open. Inside, the cold air hit me hard, carrying the smell of old coffee and candy. I wandered the aisles pretending to browse, but my eyes kept darting to the window. The truck was still there, and now there was movement. When I stepped back outside, I froze. He wasn't at the truck anymore. He was standing near the edge of the lot, just far enough into the shadows that the overhead lights didn't touch him. Tall, rail-thin, ball cap pulled low, boots worn down at the toes. His shirt was stained with sweat and grease, and he was staring at me like he'd been waiting for me to come out. "You driving that little silver Civic?" His voice was rough, like gravel scraping metal. I didn't answer. I headed for my car, walking fast but not running, keys clenched tight in my fist. "You alone out here?" That made me grip the panic button on my keys so hard my thumb ached. I didn't look back. Just unlocked the door, slid in, and locked it in one motion. Through the windshield, I saw him take a step forward. Just one, like he was testing if I'd react. I started the engine. The dogs in my head, those gut instincts that bark when something's wrong and we're screaming now. I backed out fast, swung toward the exit. In the mirror, I saw him turn back toward his truck. Seconds later, the semi's headlights came alive, blinding in the glass. He pulled out right after me. Back on I-40, I pushed to 80. He matched me. I dropped to 60. He matched again. My chest felt tight, every breath shallow. The next exit came up fast, just a little county road disappearing into darkness. At the last second, I jerked the wheel and cut across 2 lanes, tires squealing. The truck roared past on the interstate, not slowing. I didn't merge back for 10 minutes. Sitting on that back road with my hazard lights blinking, the silence pressing in from all sides. When I finally worked up the nerve to get moving again, the highway felt emptier than before. And for the rest of that night, every set of headlights behind me looked like they might belong to him. I don't know why he followed me off I-40, why he walked toward me in that lot, or what he would have said if I'd answered him. But I do know this. Out here, when the road feels empty, it's not always because no one else is around. Sometimes it's because the wrong someone has decided. You're the only one they need to see. I was 19, halfway through a road trip to visit my cousin in Nevada, when a storm hit hard enough to make the wipers useless. Sheets of rain slammed the windshield, thunder rolling so low it rattled the steering wheel. I'd planned to drive straight through the night, but visibility had dropped to almost nothing, and my hands were aching from gripping the wheel so tight. That's when I saw the flicker of neon ahead. A lone roadside motel, its sign buzzing in red and blue against the black sky. I pulled off, water spraying up from the tires. The gravel lot half flooded under the flickering glow of the overhang. The place was old, maybe built in the 60s, the kind where every room opened straight onto an exterior hallway that ran along the length of the building. Inside the front office, the clerk looked like he'd been half asleep when I walked in. He slid a room key across the counter, a real metal key, not a card, and told me my room was upstairs at the far end. The hallway was narrow, the carpet dark with years of wear, the air thick with that musty mix of mildew and cheap cleaning supplies. Every door I passed was closed, numbers peeling from the wood. The rain hammered the metal roof, echoing in the long tunnel of the hallway. When I reached my room, I fumbled with the key, water dripping from my jacket, before finally getting the lock to turn. The room was exactly what I expected. A sagging bed, an old TV bolted to the wall, one lamp with a yellowed shade. I shut the door, slid the deadbolt, and stood there for a second, letting the quiet sink in. Except it wasn't quiet. From somewhere down the hallway came a soft, uneven tapping. Not like footsteps, slower, heavier, as if someone was dragging the toe of their shoe along the floor. It would stop, then start again. I went to the window, pushing the curtain just enough to peek out. The lot was empty except for my car and an old rusted pickup near the corner. No one was outside. The sound was coming from inside. I told myself it was just another guest. Still, I grabbed my phone, set it on the nightstand, and kept the TV off so I could listen. Minutes passed. The tapping stopped. Then faintly, I heard the metallic click of a door handle turning. Not mine. One close enough that I could tell it was in the same hallway. I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. The distorted fisheye view made the hallway seem even longer, the walls bending inward. At first it was empty. Then a figure came into view. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving slow, his head tilted down, a baseball cap shadowing his face. He was walking with his hand trailing along the wall, fingertips brushing the doors as he passed each one. When he reached mine, he stopped. I held my breath. His head turned slightly toward the peephole, and for a moment it felt like he was staring straight into my eye. Then his hand moved, slowly, deliberately, to my door handle. The lock rattled. I stepped back, heart slamming against my ribs, one hand on my phone ready to call the front. Desk or 911. He jiggled the handle again, harder this time. Then nothing. The silence stretched so long I wasn't sure if he was still there. I moved to the window, peeled the curtain back a fraction, and scanned the lot. That's when I saw him. He was standing in the glow of the stairwell light halfway down the hall, looking out toward the parking lot like he was waiting for someone. And in that brief flash of light, I saw his other hand up, holding a long, thin object. Not a cane, not an umbrella. I stayed frozen at the window until he finally walked down the stairs and disappeared into the storm. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound, every groan of the old building, Every gust of wind rattling the window, it made my skin crawl. The next morning when I checked out, I mentioned it to the clerk. He didn't look surprised. He just asked if I'd left my door unlocked. I told him no. He gave me a long look, like he wanted to say something but didn't. Then he slid the receipt toward me without a word. Driving away, I kept glancing in the mirrors, half expecting to see that same man's cap and shadowed face behind me on the road. I was 13 the first time. My parents left me alone to handle a delivery on the ranch. We lived 5 miles down a gravel road in the Great Plains. Our nearest neighbor a speck 2 miles off. Nights out there weren't just quiet, they were hollow. No cars, no glow on the horizon, just you, the wind, and whatever else happened to be awake. That weekend, my parents had driven my little sister to Dallas for a competition. I stayed to accept a late-night cattle delivery from Nebraska. It wasn't my first delivery. I'd been helping my dad unload for years, but it was my first without him watching. His only warning before leaving, "Don't tell the driver you're alone." Midnight came and went, the road empty. Around 1 in the morning, headlights finally cut through the dark, way off down the gravel. I expected them to roll right up to the chute. They didn't. The truck stopped dead in the middle of the road, engine idling, lights pouring into the black. It sat there for 30 minutes. No door opening, no movement, just that idling rumble filling the night. When it finally started creeping forward, it didn't pull smooth to the chute. It crawled, like the driver was dragging the moment out. He climbed down, and right away I knew something wasn't right. He looked like he'd been wearing the same clothes for days. Denim shirt stiff with dirt, hands stained, boots caked. His eyes were bloodshot, darting over my shoulder past me, never quite meeting mine. He mumbled about being late, about a flat tire, then something about animals in the road, then about fuel. None of it linked together. Then he asked, "How old are you?" I gave him the vaguest answer I could. He stared for a moment, his mouth curling in a way that made my skin prickle. Then, out of nowhere, he told me about dating a girl when he was younger, and finding out later she was related to him, and how he kept seeing her anyway. He wasn't telling me that for conversation. He wanted a reaction. I didn't give him one. I just told him we should start unloading because my mom was waiting inside. He grumbled, climbed up into the pot trailer, and dropped the first gate. I stayed where I always did, outside the ramp, counting heads as the cattle came off. He opened the second compartment, then vanished inside to mess with the inner divider. A minute later, he called out. Said he needed help in there. I hesitated. I'd been around these trailers all my life. You don't need a second person inside unless something's gone. Seriously wrong. And even then, you don't call a kid. I told him I had to stay outside to count. He insisted. I refused. The second he realized I wasn't moving, his tone shifted, sharp, impatient, but then he dropped the gate anyway. Same thing with the next compartment. He'd open it, disappear inside, call for me, get frustrated when I wouldn't come in. I kept my distance. Every instinct in my gut told me that trailer was a trap. By the time we got to the last pen, his small talk was gone. He was quiet now, eyes narrowed, jaw tight. He released the final group, then climbed down and told me to get in his truck, cab to grab the delivery slip from the glove box. I told him to get it himself. He just stood there looking at me. The gravel popped under his boots as he finally turned, climbed into the cab and leaned out to hand me the slip. I signed fast, told him we were done. He didn't leave. I walked straight to the house, heart pounding, locked the door, and peeked through the curtains. His truck sat there in the dark, engine humming for over an hour. Just sitting, waiting. When he finally rolled away, the silence that followed was almost worse. I didn't sleep until the sun came up. That unload should have been 20 minutes. Instead, it stretched into one of the longest, most dangerous hours of my life. To this day, I don't know what was waiting for me inside that trailer, but I know I was never meant to walk out of it. When you've been driving a rig as long as I have, you learn the road's got more than potholes and bad weather waiting for you. Some stretches, they have things you can't explain, things you don't want to explain. I learned that the hard way in the winter of 2009, running a long haul from Houston to Los Angeles. My twin brother Raymond was with me that trip. He drove a Freightliner Cascadia. I was in a company-issued Volvo VNL 860, barely a year old. We both worked for the same Houston-based outfit, so convincing dispatch to let him ride along for my LA drop was easy. From there, I was booked for a cross-border run up I-5 to Vancouver, BC. About 1,075 miles north, give or take 20 hours driving. I had nearly a week to kill before the pickup, so the plan was simple. Park at my cousin's place in LA. Take it easy. Hit the beaches, recharge. The first leg was clean. Westbound I-10 all the way across Texas and Arizona, then up through the Palm Springs wind corridor. The sky pouring molten orange over the San Gabriel. Range as we rolled in. LA traffic was the usual nightmare, but my cousin had acreage in the San Fernando Valley big enough to park a rig. We stayed 3 days. Grocery runs, Target runs, nothing unusual. Then we left late one night, aiming to beat the morning crush heading north. It was just past the Grapevine, that steep, winding climb through Tejon Pass, where I-5 threads between the mountains, when a flashing amber board lit up over the lanes. Road closed ahead, no warning. No posted detour, just a row of cones and a Caltrans pickup forcing traffic onto a side ramp. Not many of us got caught in it, just a couple cars and our truck. GPS rerouted us towards CA-33, 2 lanes slicing into the kind of backcountry, where the dark eats your headlights whole. For the first hour, the road was empty. Flat farmland stretched to the horizon. Then gradually, the fields gave way to dense pines. The clock hit midnight, and we still hadn't seen another set of headlights. The forest pressed in from both sides, branches knotting over the road, shadows layered on shadows. Then the smell hit. It came in faint at first, like roadkill somewhere far off. But it kept building, thick, metallic, rotten, the kind of stench that coats your throat. Raymond grimaced, said he needed to pull over and take a leak. We stopped on the shoulder. Trees rising like walls on either side. The night dead silent. No crickets, no wind. Just us and that smell. He stepped into the tree line while I walked the length of the trailer, checking straps. The stink was stronger at the rear doors and my skin crawled. I went to grab my flashlight from the cab, but froze when I heard it, a whisper, close. "Hey, Nick?" I turned. Raymond was emerging from the tree line, his face pale. "You see that?" he asked, pointing across the road. Through the black, I caught it too, a faint, flickering light deep in the woods. Lantern? Flashlight? I didn't know. I didn't have time to ask before Raymond's eyes locked on something behind me. I spun and my stomach dropped. In the moonlight, just beyond the ditch, shapes hung from the trees. Human shapes. I snapped the flashlight on, and the beam cut through the dark like a blade. It wasn't our imagination. They were bodies. At least a dozen, maybe more, swaying gently as if the trees themselves were breathing. Some fresh enough their faces were still there. Others bloated, blackened, or stripped down to bone. One had been split open from sternum to belly, hollowed out like a deer after field dressing. I gagged and killed the light. And that's when I saw the glow again. Moving closer. We didn't wait. Raymond shoved me toward the cab. We climbed in, slammed the locks, and I punched the ignition. As we tore down the road, I risked a glance in the mirror and wished I hadn't. They were standing in the road, figures, 5, maybe 10, all in dark clothes, motionless except for one, taller than the rest, wearing something on its head. At first I thought mask, then maybe an animal skull, antlers branching into the night. The others just stared, shoulder to shoulder, as the tall one tilted its head like it was memorizing our truck. We didn't stop until we hit a truck stop in Redding. 8 hours north, the I-5 far behind us. While I fueled, Raymond called our boss and the local sheriff's office. We gave them the mile marker from where GPS showed we'd been forced off. But they didn't have much to say. No open cases, no missing person bulletins in that county. Just, we'll look into it. Weeks later, I heard a rumor from another driver, something about cult territory in the remote Los Padres backcountry. Sacrifices, organ harvesting, killings that never make the news. Whether that's what we drove into, I can't say. But I know what I saw in those trees. I know what stood in that road. And I know I'll never take an unmarked detour in the dark again. Raymond still drives long haul. Me? I took a local run in Texas and never looked back. But every winter when the air turns sharp and still, I swear I catch that same rotten smell. And every time, My hands tightened on the wheel. It was sometime in the dead zone between 3 and 4 in the morning. That hour when the highway feels like it's been abandoned by the rest of the world. Me and my husband were running the last stretch of a cross-country haul, heading west with the last of our belongings crammed. Into the back of our SUV and our 2 dogs, both big German Shepherd mixes, curled up behind the seats. The cab smelled faintly of coffee and wet fur, the heater blowing just enough to keep us awake. The road had been empty for miles. When we saw the blue and white sign for a rest area, we were both running on fumes. I needed a restroom, he needed to smoke, and the dogs had been pacing in the back seat for the last 20 minutes. The rest area sat just off a lonely stretch of interstate, lights buzzing under a sky so black you couldn't tell where the tree line ended. From the exit ramp, we could see the layout, a few dim lampposts over the car section, a longer stretch for semis, and the squat brick restroom building halfway up a small rise. Just one other car sat in the light, an old sedan near the vending machines, and 2 semis parked deep in the truck row. We pulled in, killed the headlights. My husband was driving, so I told him I'd hit the restroom first. He walked with me part way, up until the path curved and I could see the building ahead, then stopped to light a cigarette, saying he'd keep an eye out from there. Inside, the restroom smelled like industrial cleaner trying and failing to cover decades of road use. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. My footsteps echoed against the tile. I didn't see another soul. I was quick, washed my hands, and headed back out into the cold. That's when I decided to take the dogs for a walk before swapping seats. I clipped their leashes, and they bounded ahead toward the fenced-off pet area. At the far end of the lot, just beyond the last streetlight, the air had that damp, metallic bite you only get before dawn. Gravel crunched under my boots. And then I noticed movement. One of the semis, the one parked at the farthest edge, had just fired up. At first I thought maybe the driver was starting his shift, but instead of pulling onto the exit lane, the truck eased forward, slowly, almost creeping. Then the high beams snapped on. Blinding light washed over me, so bright I had to throw a hand up. I shifted my stance, thinking maybe it was just an unlucky angle. But then the lights blinked, sharp, deliberate bursts. On, off, on, off. The dogs stopped sniffing, their ears shooting forward. They stared at the truck like they were locking onto prey. I turned toward the car. The truck kept crawling, the beams locked on me. Every blink timed just enough to make my pulse pound harder. I tightened my grip on the leashes and walked faster. By the time I reached the car, the lights cut out, leaving me blinking in the sudden dark. The truck idled there. The silhouette of the driver was clear against the glow of the dash. He was facing me. I reached for my keys, trying to keep my hand steady. The dogs were silent now, hackles up, teeth showing. Their low growls vibrated through the leashes. Then came the sound that made my stomach drop. The groan of a heavy door swinging open. I turned my head just enough to see him. One boot was on the step, his hand gripping the frame of the cab. He wasn't getting out fast, just steady, like he had all the time in the world to close the distance. I could feel the adrenaline flood my chest, my legs, every instinct screaming that I did not want to find out why he was walking toward me. I leaned slightly forward, ready to drop the leashes if it came to it. And then, just like that, my husband was there. He came from the direction of the building, cigarette still in his hand, and stepped right between me and the driver's gaze. His arm went around my shoulders, and without missing a beat, he looked dead at the man and flipped him off. The driver froze mid-step. For a long second, no one moved. Then he slowly stepped back into the cab. The door shut with a hollow slam. Reverse lights flickered. The truck rolled back, turned, and eased out of the lot without a glance in our direction. Once we were back on the highway, I told my husband exactly what had happened. That's when he told me something. I'd never heard that some truckers flash their lights as a signal to women for services. He said it like it was common knowledge, like this was just something that happens out here. I stared at the black ribbon of road ahead of us, thinking about the dogs, about the timing, about how close I came to being cornered in a half-lit parking lot at 3 in the morning. I wasn't dressed to stand out. Sweatshirt, jeans, hair tied up. 2 big dogs beside me. And yet that man still stepped out like the road was his, and I was just another part of it. And I knew deep down that if my husband had taken even a minute longer to come back, I'd be telling you a very different story.